Hi, how you doing? Welcome to, I guess, today's edition of the video on my channel. And I'm doing something I don't normally do. We're going to do another interview. And I'm going to try to bring you at least one a month. I said that before. And I'm calling this series The Unsung Heroes of Drumming. And why am I calling that? You'll see as we go on. Anyway, I'm so pleased today to bring this interview to you. You remember the first one we had Donnie Brown from the Verve Pipe? And today, we have a gentleman who, let me put it this way, let me preface this by saying, it is enough in any musician's career, be it a drummer, bass player, that they play with one icon, rock and roll, pop, whatever you want. Not so with this gentleman. He's played with, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 in totality, more. I'm going to mention 3 to you right now. Cyndi Lauper? Oh yeah, that's an icon and a half right there. That would be enough. That would make a career right there. Joan Jett. Joan Jett. How many jukeboxes have you heard her tunes on? Okay? Joan Jett. That's 2. That would make a career. And one more I want to mention to you that I was actually surprised at, because I didn't know he had done this until I began doing the research for the interview, was there's probably 2 bands in the late 60s, early 70s that people would consider real pop icons that sort of shaped the business a little bit. I got this fly. We talked about that in the last video, this fly that won't stop. Anyway, and this is, of course, the first real major pop icon of the late 60s, 70s were the Beatles, right? They really changed music. They changed how we think of music. They changed how we produce music, all of that kind of stuff. But there was another band that wasn't a band. They started as a TV show, and they became a band. And truth be told on this, they had almost as many top 10 hits as the Beatles. Most of those songs for these gentlemen were written by Boyce and Hart, but nonetheless, they were hits. And they were played on many radios and many TV sets, and that band would be the Monkees. And to me, this is just incredible. We've got one gentleman today, and his name is the great Sandy Gennaro. Sandy Gennaro. Like I said, 3 right off the top of my head icons that he played with. And in order to do that, you need to be at the top of your game, pushing on all cylinders all the time. But anyway, without further ado, let's go right to it, man. Let's go right to it. Ladies and gentlemen, Sandy Gennaro. Interview now on the channel, so I'm excited about this.
Okay.
So how you doing? How you holding up in the pandemic and all that?
We're doing okay. We're we're trying to make lemonades out of lemons, and
I get that.
take advantage of the time and getting some work done around the house and getting my virtual speaking career going. And so, it's in a lot of ways it's a new beginning.
It is.
And, again, we're trying to just think positively about it. There's a lot of things that are different in everybody's life. So we're all in it together.
On a different level, same thing here. I was always the Mr. Freelancer running around playing all over the place with all sorts of people. And now I started, about the pandemic really hit, I started this channel. And then doing the usual stuff, demonstrating Rosanna and what everybody else was doing, and then I got an idea to start interviewing people,
right?
Just to separate myself from the ocean where there's a whole lot of fish in it. Because YouTube,
right,
50 million guys demonstrating Rosanna. We don't need one more video of that. And so I just figured, well, let me just talk to guys like you. And the last one was Donnie Brown from. I got one coming up with Tino Gross. He used to play with John Lee Hooker. So just like one a month.
That's good. Awesome.
Anyway, let's go back to the beginning for you, the very beginning. Like for me,
Okay.
it was Ed Sullivan and Ringo Starr. That's where I fell in love with drums.
Well, for me, it was I got a toy drum for Christmas when I was 3, and I still have that drum in the studio here. It's behind me. It's There it is. You see it right. You see it right
Oh
there.
yeah, I see it right there in the corner. Cool.
Right there above the bongos there. So
Yeah.
I just keep that around just as a little token of my humble beginnings, and that's basically where it started. I never actually made the conscious decision to play the drums. It was just there. And I was always very attracted to rhythm growing up with the big band music being played around my house. And my older sisters were playing in the 50s, were playing Chuck Berry and Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis and Bo Diddley and all of that. So I was really attracted to rhythm first, and then rock and roll through my sister's 45 collection, and then the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. That was the first time I actually saw a drummer play, and what that music did to the audience. I wanted to be a part of that. I didn't know exactly what was going on. I was like 14 at the time. But I wanted to be part of that, and that basically lit the fire, and the fire is still going, 56 years later. So
Right. So did you end up taking any kind of formal lessons, or was it just you started playing in bands and doing it on your own, or?
well, when I first started playing, when I first got my drum set, I took some lessons from a guy named Danny Kish. And he had a music store in Great Hills in Staten Island, and he came to the house like once a week, and he just taught me the very basics of reading quarter notes and eighth notes, and I never really got farther than that. And then I started playing in bands. I let the lessons go. I was never actually formally trained in marching band or any of that. So then I started playing with bands, and my education was learning from records, learning from Vanilla Fudge records, learning from The Who and The Cream and Hendrix and all the artists that had one-hit wonders at the time. This was what my band was playing. So that's how basically I grew up playing in cover bands and trying to adapt to the style of that particular band. When we did Led Zeppelin, I try to be John Bonham. When we did Hendrix, I try to be Mitch Mitchell, etc. So trying to emulate all those different styles, all that combination into my body created a new style. It's like the sum is greater than its parts. So that was my education for about 20 years. And then I moved to LA to get my first big break, and things happened in LA, and I ended up getting my first big break in New York. And then the dominoes started falling. And, again, it was never anything else I wanted to be. And yes, there was a lot of times where it took a tremendous amount of faith and belief in myself because, there's peaks and valleys in the music business. So when you're in a valley, you just got to believe that there's a peak coming, and you got to keep the belief in check, because if you start getting down on yourself and start wondering if another gig is ever going to come, then that's the beginning and the end for you. And I've always tried to resist that, even though I admit that sometimes it's very hard to do, to stay positive, especially in a time like now.
I tell my students, and on my channel I say it all the time, the music business is not for the weak-hearted. It is definitely this and this and this, and you never know. Even how I got the Dick Wagner gig was like a fluke. I had quit something, and I left a big relationship. I was sitting alone for 3 months, and I get a call from I think you know him, Ray Goodman.
Yeah.
To just do a little blues show he was doing.
Right.
And I literally had not gigged in about 3 or 4 months, and I had been touring with this country act and this rock act and all just slow time. And then the next thing I know, he calls me about a month later. He says, "Hey, the regular guy can't make it for Dick. You want a sub?"
Right.
That led to the next 2 years of my life. So you just never know what's going to happen. So what for you was would you consider I'm from New York, by the way. I was born in the Bronx.
Okay.
And I lived in LaSalle and East Tremont for a long time. I'm a Bronx Italian. I don't know.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Some of us are either in jail or in the mob. That's the way it
Right, right.
goes.
Oh, okay. No, I was never. The only time I ventured into the Bronx basically was to go to Yankee Stadium.
All right, cool.
That's the only time. I was never, a Manhattan. I'm a Manhattan guy, and then we moved to Staten Island, and I was never really. Never really ventured into Brooklyn much, or the other boroughs where some of my relatives lived. Of course, I went to go visit,
Right.
whatever. But yeah.
So, what was the moment you thought your big break or your first step in, where okay, now you're not just playing in the local bar scene, you're doing something a little bigger than that you felt you crossed the bridge.
All right. Well, the bar scene. I was very active in the bar scene when I was in New York, and again, that lasted for about 20 years. And when I was about 25, I moved to Los Angeles. I made a promise to myself not to play any cover gigs for money anymore, or for a living. In other words, I wanted to play in an original band. So I had a good friend, Earl Slick, that played with David Bowie at the time, and he lived in L.A. because Bowie was based in L.A. So he encouraged me to move to L.A., so I did. And when I moved to L.A., I was there for 3 years, and nothing ever really happened for me. And after 3 years, I came to a crossroads, and I said, well, I guess this is either not going to happen. My dream of being in the rock and roll business is not going to come to any fruition if I don't do something, because right now I'm mentally in a really bad way. This is my time in LA, and I was close to giving up. I was really close. There's some things happened. I was screwed over business wise, and LA didn't really agree with me on a business level. It was a great place to live, beautiful weather, sports car, the convertible. It was all very, very nice. But if you don't have a gig, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I worked a day job in LA in a record store in order to go on auditions for original, trying to get that stone unturned. And I went on many auditions, and I was lied to, whatever. So I ended up, I was inspired to write resumes, and I wrote resumes out to 50 managers that they manage bands that I really liked their music. And one of them was Led Zeppelin's manager, was a guy named Peter Grant, and he was based in England, but his U.S. mailing address was their attorney's office in New York City. And so I sent my resume there. The only reference I had on my resume was a guy named Carmine Appice, who I befriended in LA. He played for the Vanilla Fudge growing up, and he was a big fan of mine. And so he said, yes, sure, use my name on the resume. So I used the name of the resume. It went out to 50 managers. Nobody ever called me back except for the attorney for Led Zeppelin. The Peter Grant's resume didn't get forwarded to England. It went to the attorney's office. The attorney, for some reason, opened it. And he wasn't supposed to open it, but he opened it. And right then, he was looking for a drummer to be put, to complete a band being placed around Michael Bolton and Bruce Kulick, who at the time, this attorney was shopping their material around to get a band deal for Michael Bolton. And he was getting some interest where record companies wanted to see this band. And he didn't have a drummer yet. So right at that point in time, he opens my resume and he goes, well, the guy lives in Los Angeles, so I need a guy from New York. And he opens the second page of my resume. It's Carmine's name is on it, and he recognizes Carmine's name because this attorney used to be the attorney for Vanilla Fudge, who was one of Carmine's first successful bands. The next call he makes, the attorney, is to Carmine. Carmine vouches for me. The next call after that he makes is to me in L.A., and I thought he was BSing because he wasn't even the person that I sent the resume to. Meanwhile, he's going, I'm Steve Weiss. I'm Led Zeppelin's attorney. I got your resume. I'm going, what? He goes, yeah, you sent it to Peter Grant, but I went ahead and opened it, and I need a drummer. Would you be interested in coming to New York to audition for this band? And I did. And that basically became my first big break. I went there, flew back to New York. Ironically, I got my first big break back in New York, I auditioned for the band. I ended up staying at my mother's house on Staten Island. I auditioned for the band on Wednesday, went back on Friday, and they flew in a bass player, Jimmy Haslip, and we all rehearsed on the Friday. On the Monday, we had a showcase for Polydor Records and got a deal with Polydor Records. So that was it. I was on my way back to LA, signed to a 7-album record deal. And a couple of months later, I found myself in Criteria Studios in Miami, recording the first record. And Tom Dowd, legendary producer, produced that record. That was my first.
And this is for Michael Bolton?
This is for a band put around Michael Bolton, and the band was called Blackjack.
Oh, all right, okay.
All right, because Steve Weiss, Michael wanted got a solo deal, but Steve Weiss suggested that he make it a band project. So that's why it was the band name. But Michael and Bruce Kulick, who went on to play with Kiss years later, they wrote all the songs.
All right.
So that led, me being with Blackjack and Polygram, that led to my album, doing the record with Benny Mardones, and off of that record became a hit called Into the Night, and that kind of put me on the map because now I'm on a top 10 single. That was actually it was a single that was top 10 on 2 separate occasions. One of the only songs that went top 10 on Billboard 10 years apart. So that, and then being involved with Polygram, because Benny Mardones was also on Polygram. I became friends with some of the A&R people at Polygram. They recommended me for the Pat Travers Band gig. So I ended up, it was like the dominoes. Once you get the first one,
right,
then the dominoes start falling, and one gig leads to the next. Even though when you're in a certain gig, you don't know. You look at your calendar for next year; it's empty. You don't know.
Right.
It takes a tremendous, as you said before, it takes a tremendous amount of faith,
yes,
and belief in yourself, and belief in the universe that things are going to work out. Because if you're weak-hearted or your belief system, you just imagine doing something else.
In the music business like this, you don't have no idea what's coming around the corner, and if you can't handle the fact that you're gigging today, tomorrow you might be fired, you can't do this job. This is not a steady paycheck job. There was a tune you did for Pat Travers, which I thought was really cool, and your interpretation of it was Heat in the Street. You know this tune?
Right.
Great tune. And I noticed that there's a section of it that is in 13/8. And you break it up in 6 and 7. And then later you break it up in 8 and 5. Way cool. So was that the Pat Travers Band? Was that a very rehearsed thing? Was there a lot of jamming in the band? Did you come up with your own kind of lines to it? Did Pat direct you?
Well, when I joined the band, originally I was with Pat on 2 separate occasions. I was with him in the early 80s. I joined the band in 1980 till about 83. And that's the first time I was with him. And for that time, I replaced Tommy Aldrich.
Okay.
Okay, he's the guy that played on that live album.
All right. I saw you on Don Odell's doing that with him.
Oh, okay. I still have some recordings of that. It was like a live kind of studio thing.
Right.
We played live as if we were in concert, but they recorded the whole thing on HD cameras. Well, I still have some of that. When I learned, in the early 80s, when I learned all of that Travers material, the odd time stuff, I basically learned it like I learned all the other cover stuff that I've ever done in my whole life. I put the headphones on and I played along with it. I wasn't counting. I wasn't subdividing. I was just trying to stay with the drummer on the track.
Right.
Which was Tommy Aldrich. Okay.
Of My Way, and I am the Ray Goodman. A few guys always make the joke that there are very few people that I haven't played with. Somehow I find myself in situations, and that's how I learn quickly. When I get the freelance calls, is I always chart stuff out. I figured out, chart it out, and then I don't necessarily bring charts on a gig, but the act of writing it out for me helps me to remember.
I agree.
Right.
But in 1987, I started teaching at the Collective in New York City. So
Rob
now
Wallace.
I'm teaching,
Rob
and
Wallace is
that's
my cousin.
who is it?
Rob Wallace, the owner of DC.
Oh, that's your cousin?
He's my cousin. Yeah.
Oh, he's a very good friend of mine.
He's actually married to my cousin Mary Ann.
Oh, that's awesome. You tell him I said hello. Rob is awesome.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, he's helping me a little bit with this channel. We're putting it.
Awesome. Well, you know what, Rob was instrumental in me getting that teaching gig because I lived on 57th Street at the time, and in 1986, 87, I got an offer to play with the Monkees. So I lived in an apartment. I was given a cassette and the charts for the Monkee gig, and I needed a place to rehearse. So I rehearsed. I rented a room at the Collective. After hours, they have rooms that you can go in there and rehearse on drum set. So I'm paying for my time after I rehearsed the Monkee stuff. And it was Rob. Still, he was involved at the Collective, still involved at the Collective at the time. Right. And he was sitting behind the desk collecting the money. And he goes, "What were you doing in that room?" And I said, "I'm rehearsing with the Monkees. I'm rehearsing for a Monkee tour." He goes, "Did you ever think about teaching?" And I went, "Well, wait a minute. I don't really read that well, and I never really taught. But you know what? I'll give it a try." Yeah. And he says, "All right, when you get off the road, I'll set you up with some students." And so that started a 27-year teaching career. And I basically had to learn reading. I had to teach myself to read well, charts and whatever, rudiments and all of that, because I needed to teach it now. And that's what made me a lot better reader. And then I was able to do the gigs that you talk about, where you're given a chart for a one-off kind of gig.
Right.
Where you rehearse it and then bye-bye, nice seeing you, bye.
Right. Hey, let me hit this camera again. I want to talk about Monkees. I watched like 2 or 3 concerts with you in it. I want to talk about first.
Okay.
The Monkees. You know, I'm a little younger than you, not much. And I used to watch the Monkees on Saturday morning.
Right.
Back when. And Mickey Dolenz, in some interviews, he always said they were we're like the Beatles were a bunch of musicians, a band that started acting in movies. The Monkees were actors that became a band, and throughout history. So how did that hookup come up with the Monkees? How did you hook up with that? Seems like a very Hollywood thing. So how did you find that?
It is. Well, you're right about the Hollywood part of it, but all the good things that have come to me in my life, including the Travers gig, the Cyndi Lauper gig, the Monkees gig, the Bo Diddley gig, has come as a result of me helping somebody out in a time of need. Me thinking outside myself and thinking about other people. Okay, the Monkees gig, I got a call. I already did Cyndi Lauper. This is like 1986. I already did Cyndi Lauper. I already did a tour with Queen as an opening act. I did a lot of Travers, the early 80s, all of that, played arena tours. And now I get a call in the middle of in the winter by this guy that I never heard of before. He got my number from a mutual friend and said, "Listen, I'm a musical director for this band called the Tokens. They had a hit in the 50s called The Lion Sleeps Tonight. We have an oldies gig this Saturday. My drummer bailed out the last minute. This is 2 days before the gig." He goes, "Could you help me out?" He goes, "I can't really pay you that much. You got to bring your own drums. It's about 2 hours from your house, Westbury Music Fair." I lived on Staten Island. This was way out in Long Island. And it's the middle of the winter. The sound check is at 3, but we don't go on until 9. A lot of downtime in between, or too much downtime. And I couldn't go home in between the sound check and the gig because it's too far away from my house. It wasn't a very desirable gig, but do I do it? Yes. I do it, and it worked out really good. I ended up having a really good time. Me and the musical director, who was also the bass player, got on musically really well. So about 3-4 months later, he calls me and he says, "Hey man, you bailed me out, and I'm about to be the musical director for the Monkees. Do you want to do this reunion tour? They're about to go out. They're reuniting, and they're going out with Mickey, Davey, and Peter without Mike." I ended up doing that. And it ended up to be not one reunion tour, but several reunion tours.
How long did you actually work with them?
From 86 up until, I did most reunion tours from 86 up until 2012 when David Jones passed away. In addition to that, Davey did solo gigs, which I was a part of in between Monkey tours. Mickey Dolenz did solo gigs, which I was a part of. Now, being part of the collective, which was also connected to the Monkees because I rehearsed the Monkees tour there, as I explained. I did instructional videos for the collective, and that they became very, very widely accepted. So it was a tremendous amount of benefit I've gotten from a business level and from a artistic level, just doing that one favor for that one guy.
Right. Did the monk now? This is from my Carnival days. That Carnival Cruise Line days. That just seemed like I watched a couple of the shows. I'm always impressed out about when I tell my students all the time is this is like the meat and potatoes of drumming, right? Yes, you know, I bow at the feet of Vinnie Colaiuta like the rest of everybody and those crazy polyrhythms that he can do. But being able to come from what I love that you do is I had to do it with Carnival all the time. The versions of the previous tune, you're taking a fill into a new tempo of the next tune. And you were just killing it all night, just nailing those tunes and those Hal Blaine grooves and all that stuff that he did. Just one tune, and they were almost medleys because they were going from kind of 3 or 4 seconds from one tune to another, from one tune to another. Was that a very well rehearsed, like Carnival? Every minute was planned out, or was it freer? Was it more open?
The Monkees set usually it was structured. There was a set list. And we had the songs that we go directly into one another, and then we would have a line on the set list where there's a little break, and the Davey can do a little talking with the audience, and then we do 3 or 4 more, bang, 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 and then Peter will do some talking. You know, it was like that. It was structured, but within that structure there was a little freedom, little blank spaces where the principals we used to call the Mickey, Davey, and Peter used to be able to fill in, ad lib, whatever was on their mind. They could talk to the audience. They each had an opportunity. It was like touring. You know, I always gave Jerry Renino, the bass player, who was the MD that hired me originally for the Monkees. I gave him a lot of credit because it was like being the musical director for 3 solo artists on the same stage. You know, each of the Monkees had their own idea what the gig should be, but only one could survive. You know what I mean? So it was it was that kind of dynamic going on. It was like, man, it was tough.
I really did watch this. One part I got to mention, you're going to hate me for, and again, you know, when I did Carnival, I used to have to do something 5 minutes of shtick or so, and I actually developed one of the comics helped me develop because I'm from the Bronx and I could do the accent. I developed 3 minutes on what A-O means, just to get the audience to laugh before we played. And you do an impersonation of Archie Bunker on one of them. I thought that was great. So did they push you into that, or what happened on the bus? What happened?
Well, Davey, in that clip, Davey tells the story was that it happened on a bus. We were actually in a van driving, and I was in the back with my head turning in the front seat. Jerry Renino was driving, and in the back seat was Dave Alexander, the keyboard player. And I always was a big fan of Archie Bunker and All in the Family. And I always had that, he ain't old enough to play one of those yet. I used to do that at home around my dinner table. And, I used to crack up my family, whatever. So I did the skit. And little did I know at the time, I did the skit for Davey was in the front passenger seat. And I did the skit, but little did I know at the time that Dave Alexander, the keyboard player, did a great Edith. You know, he impersonated Edith Bunker really, really well. So I just I said, yeah, there's this episode of All in the Family where, Gloria is about to have a baby and Edith tells Archie to go up in the attic to get the bassinet. And Archie goes, no, he ain't old enough to play one of those yet. So Davey just lost it. And he just lost it the way we did it in the van. And then that night he goes, come on down here, sir. And it turned into almost a nightly thing. And then I made the mistake of impersonating the singing nun. When I saw the singing nun on Ed Sullivan, I put a towel around my head and pretended to sing Dominica,
That's great.
and I did that for Davey. And little did I know, a couple of nights later, hey Sandy, grab the towel and do that singing nun for. And that's the way Davey was, man. It wasn't only just Archie Bunker and the singing nun. It was if we were in a diner during the day, a truck stop, and the waitress said that she played, the ukulele, and we were playing in that town. All of a sudden, we see her on the side of the stage. He'd put her on the guest list. Hey, bring your ukulele with you tonight.
That's great.
And then she'd be on stage playing ukulele. He'd call her out on stage to play ukulele in one, a monkey song or whatever,
That's great.
That's the way Davy Jones was. He was just awesome. I miss him very much.
I love that too, because it just reminds me of my introduction. That I did a lot of touring theater work. I toured with Godspell a little bit, and I toured with a Closer Walk with Patsy Cline. It's a big Nashville kind of show.
Yeah.
I did that, and when I first auditioned for it, I just auditioned the playing thing, and I got the gig, but then I found that I had lines. I was actually playing Willie Ackerman. And I had to come on, I had to do jokes with the star about her pink panties and all that. And that was my introduction to the gig. It isn't just the drumming. That's 50%. There's another 50% riding on the bus, being somebody you can get along with, all that kind of stuff. And if the gig means you do an Archie Bunker impersonation, yeah, you do an Archie Bunker impersonation.
Right. And you know what? I found that, the playing and the actual ability to play and your knowledge of the material is a lot less than 50%.
Yeah.
Your personality and how you get along with people and your work ethic and your respect for other people, your respect for everybody, no matter what their title is, goes a lot further than just your knowledge of the material. I replaced drummers in bands, well-known, very popular bands that are still around today because the drummer did not have the personality. He was a better drummer than me.
Right.
But I got the gig because of I was able to get along with people, or he wasn't able to get along with people, or you got to live 22 and a half hours on a tour bus. You're on stage an hour and a half, And
a lot of guys just don't realize that part of the music business is so much more. A lot of gigs that you do, like the Patsy Cline, and when I was living in New York, and I lived there till I was about 32, I moved to Michigan because of family reasons, my daughter. But I got to hang with Max Weinberg a couple of times.
Right.
And I remember once he said to me, and I was doing some shows with Kid Creole at the time, and I was working with RCA, and he had said to me, I'm under no illusions that there aren't a million guys who can do the Springsteen gig as good, if not better than I do. I just happen to know and get along with Bruce.
Right.
Like that's
what it is.
That's what it is, and I'm a Springsteen fan anyway, but yes, the drum work is really cool. Max does a great job, but a lot of guys can do that job, but he fits into that. He's that spoke for that wheel. Be there. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That is so awesome. There's a couple of things, when you talk to people. Same thing happened with Donnie, where we have a little bit of little connecting dots, like we did with Rob Wallace. There's one more. I don't know if you played with her, but when I was in New York a couple of years ago visiting my dad, I did a bunch of jams with Mishti and Alex Nolan, who is now Cyndi Lauper's guitar player. And I don't know if you toured with her, but I want to talk about Cyndi too and how you got into that, because she was telling me she loves working with Cyndi, and she would go to Australia to work with her. And I think in the last 10 years or so, she's been working with Cyndi Lauper. Alex Nolan, a girl guitar player, very, very good.
Well, she's been with her I've seen her because every time Cyndi comes through Nashville, I go see her. The last time I think it was, she opened for Rod Stewart here in Nashville about 2 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, I think she did. So how did that gig come to be, the Cyndi Lauper gig? And I know you played on Money Changes Everything. And are you on the studio record of that or the live recording of that?
The live recording of that, which was the live video. Usually when a band does a video for a single off a record, they lip sync to the track on the record. And
I saw the live video of that. And then you did the Goonies.
We on tour in 1984, while on tour, we went into the studio and recorded The Goonies Are Good Enough, and what a thrill.
And I noticed on the kit that you were, well, at least it was in the video, you had some electronic pads. Obviously, there's a lot of electronic little things going on in Cyndi Lauper's music. So was that new for you? Did you have learn to incorporate that because of her? Had you been using that before?
Well, no, I haven't. I was introduced to electronic drums on Cindy's gig.
Okay.
So, that's another attribute that every young musician has to have. You can't be very rigid in your style. You can't be very rigid in even what you play. Because,
right.
Because through Travers, I was a 6 racks, 2 floor toms, 2 bass drums, the big Metallica kind of drum set. And with Lauper, she said, nope, this is not the Who. So single bass drum, and she wanted me to play Simmons incorporated with my acoustic drum set. So it's adapting to change is one of the attributes that you must have, in addition to having a tremendous amount of faith in yourself and in your ability and in the future and in events that haven't happened yet. You have to be very, very flexible when it comes to change, because there are very few guys that get to play in a band that records and tours with the same guys. There's very few Aerosmiths, Led Zeppelins, band situations where your opinion matters.
And less now than ever before. There's less of that now than ever before.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you join a Cyndi Lauper's band, their name is on the marquee, and you have to recognize that fact. And the fact if they want you to play a glockenspiel and stand upside down and spit nickels while you play a paradiddle inverted, well, then you have to do it. Because if you're not going to do it, then start your own band and do what you want. But if you're going to work for other people, you gotta check your ego at the door and do what is necessary for the artist. The artist is the king, and the songs of that artist are the key. So if it goes into stylistically, if it doesn't fit. Cyndi told me at the beginning, if there's not a crash on the record, I don't want you to play a crash live.
Right.
So, you talk about other drummers being able to do that gig. I mean, somebody that can go boom, da boom, boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom for 2.5 minutes in time could do Cyndi Lauper's gig. So it's not, it didn't take, and this is out of total respect to her material, but it doesn't take, Kali Yuta to play it.
Right.
So, what now allows me to keep the gig when 50,000 drummers could do what I do on stage?
Right.
What allows me to keep the gig? Well, it's a personality thing. It's a willingness to go with the flow. It's a willingness to, if Cyndi says, here's your stage clothes, Sandy, and a brown paper bag, you wear those stage clothes, no matter how ridiculous they look. And that actually happened to us. She had four brown A&P shopping bags with our name sharpied on the side. Here's your stage clothes. Wear whatever you want on any night, but these are your stage clothes. And so it takes a bit of flexibility and adjusting to change. I used electronic drums for the first time on Cyndi's gig. And
did you enjoy using them? Did you find
it was awesome. I thought it was going to be shit. I whined, but that's the first stage of accepting change. You don't like change. So you whine about it.
Whining is the first stage of grief. I love that. That's good.
It is. Whining about it is the first stage of accepting change. Right. No, I don't want it. I'm comfortable on my double bass drum set. No, right. Boo-hoo. Well, you know what? Then it's like, just tapping. Look at all these sounds. 700 preset sound. Boo, boo, boo. All those sounds. And then the way I used it was I had acoustic snare, acoustic bass drum. And then on my left side, where it would be my left kick, I had a Simmons bass drum. So I had acoustic and a Simmons bass drum next to one another, and I didn't play them in the traditional way of I didn't play them alternating. But when a chorus, let's say the chorus to Money Changes Everything came, if the groove was boom, 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 boom. Now the chorus, boom, boom, boom. Both of them simultaneously. So now I had acoustic and electronic playing the same notes at the same time, and how that embellished the bass drum pattern, because now you had the direct digital signal of the electronics accompanied with the acoustic set. So that really, I really liked. And Girls Just Want to Have Fun was acoustic snare, and I doubled it with the electronic white noise snare to simulate the sound of the record.
Oh, right.
So I was doubling my acoustic. I mean, there was some fills on the Simmons toms or whatever, but for the most part, it was just doubling the groove in certain parts of the song with the electronics.
Right. I had to use them with Carnival Cruise Lines, and I learned to enjoy them and incorporate. They used to do this big Michael Jackson thing, and obviously there was electronic drums I had to incorporate into that. One of the things you said that I tell my students, and I like to use these interviews to point out what it really takes to be a drummer, especially now, is whether it's a local diva. There's a local girl, Tasha Owens, downtown. She's like the big blues diva. I work with her all the time. Or with Anetta, or Wagner, or when I got to play with Mark Farner. Whoever it is, their name's on the bill, not mine.
Right.
Whatever they need me to do to make them feel good and sound good, whatever I need to do, whether it's boom, bop, or telling jokes in front of the audience, whatever's has to be done, that's my job. Because at the end of the night, it's them that's going to hire me or fire me or like what they did, and I'm going to feel good about myself. Less about whether I did the craziest paradiddle thing that anybody's ever seen.
Right.
Love that you said that, because that is really the core of this business. For us, we are side guys. I mean, there are exceptions. There's Gads and Buddy Riches and Caliutas, but for the most part, we are side guys, and our job is to be the team player.
Well, Steve Gadd's a side guy too. Caliuta's a side guy. He doesn't have his own band. He's a side man too. He's got to follow Caliuta when he plays with Jeff Beck. If Jeff goes, no, I don't want, play a little simpler there. Caliuta go, okay. Jeff Beck goes jump. Caliuta goes how high.
Right. And actually, I've written interviews where Sting actually had to get him to calm down a little bit to play a little simpler on some of the grooves. So, and Caliuta knows that,
Right.
He's going to play different for Herbie Hancock than he does for Sting or Chaka Khan.
That's correct. And I mentioned that Blackjack record, and a lesson that I learned during the recording of that record that I still carry with me today, and I pass it on to all my students, was now we're playing without a click. We're recording tracks live with the band in the studio, and I did this, which I thought was a really good one-measure fill to introduce the chorus of one of these songs. Tom Dowd stops the track. Sandy, why did you play that fill there before the chorus? Well, Tommy, and then this is my first record, and I'm now he stops the track, and my heart is beating a mile a minute because he's reprimanding me. And why did you play that fill there? I go, well, Tom, I thought it was a good fill. He goes, I thought it was a great fill, Sandy, but that's not what I asked you. I asked you why you played a 4-beat fill, one measure worth of fill prior to the chorus right there in that song. And I didn't have an answer for him. He goes, you know what, Sandy? I'm going to be honest with you. It didn't fit. It was an awesome fill, well executed. You were in time with it. You came out of the beat prior to it and went back into the beat after it in time. It was totally in time, but it doesn't fit the song. So save that fill for your clinics. Save that fill for your drum solo. Because if it doesn't fit the song, don't play it. Play only what fits. And it's always better to be asked to play more than to be asked to play less. So always err on the side of being simple. Less is more. And if you're asked to play, most of the time, 99% of the time, that simplistic approach will be perfect. But if you're asked to play more, then go ahead and play more, but not until you, and I carry that lesson. Every time I play a set of drums, I'm listening to that advice.
I had a music director once tell me way back when I was 20 that a show I was working on. He said, no matter what you do, just always play the song. Just play.
Right.
And that was a Ringo thing. Ringo's probably one of the greatest or really earliest guys who was doing it in a well-known way, a song drummer.
Right.
He played the song. Very simple, in my life. Chakum.
Right. That's my funeral song, by the way.
Oh, is it really? Really?
Yeah. That's my favorite Beatles song of all time.
It is a beautiful, beautiful tune. But he played so simply sometime, and it was so great. Actually, fit what was going on, and yet there's signature parts. Ticket to Ride, Come Together had signature things that you can't play Come Together without hearing and those triple on there.
Well, there's one track. That one track, Into the Night, has got one of those signature things. That signature boom, patach. I don't know. Are you familiar with that song at all?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, well, you have to listen to that song. It was a top 10 single twice. And the producer just said, do a little pickup on the third beat or the fourth beat to bring the song in. And he liked what I did. I just did 1, 2, 3, boom, and he said every time he stopped it, and he says it was great, it fit perfect. He said every time there's a turnaround in the song, play that same intro fill.
Right.
So it became like a come together, or In My Life. It came like a drum hook where the same fill occurred all throughout the whole song.
Well, that drums can make or break a tune.
Yep.
And you'll find, that's great. There's a cool little signature part that now that song can't be played by anyone unless they do that little bit.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not that tune.
That's correct.
And there's tons of things. 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. There's all sorts of things that fall into that category. I want to talk about a few more people that you played with that just to mention them. I know you work with Joan Jett.
Yeah.
And when did that happen?
That happened like around 88. At that point in time, well, I knew Kazim Sultan in Joan Jett's band for years on Staten Island. So I knew him, and I knew Ricky Bird, the guitar player at the time. We all jammed together at the China Club, and I think Joan saw one of Cyndi Lauper's shows, I think in Manhattan.
All right.
So I think she had some background with me, and I knew some guys in the band. So it was time to replace her drummer at the time, and I got the call. And I got a call about 2 weeks. They were already on tour with Robert Plant in the fall of '88, and I got the call whether I was willing to do it. I said sure. They sent me a show tape, a board tape of the live show, and I learned it all. And they were, as I said, they were on tour playing Washington D.C., and they were on a day off traveling through New York to go up to Boston to play Boston. And on the day off, I went to a rehearsal studio in Manhattan and auditioned for Joan, got the gig, and I was told to go pack up my drums because there was going to be a truck picking up my drums that night from my house in Staten Island. And I flew to Boston the next day, and there I was opening for Robert Plant and Joan Jett and the Blackhearts the next day.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Did you get to record with Joan too?
I toured all throughout '89 and part of '90.
And did you record a couple of tunes with her too?
I recorded on an album called The Hit List.
I saw that.
And it was an album of cover tunes that Joan did.
Yeah.
And I played on 3 tracks on that record, 3 or 4 tracks.
One other guy I thought was way cool that you got to play with was Robin Gibb.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the dominoes that fell as a result of the Blackjack gig, where Tom Dowd produced the Blackjack record. And in 1985, he called me. He goes, "Hey, you want to do a Robin Gibb record?" I said, "Sure." So he flew me down to Middle Ear Studios, which is the BG Studios, and Maurice Gibb produced it, Robin's solo record, along with co-produced it with Tom Dowd, and Phil Chen was on that session. It was a really, really good band. Phil Chen, and I forget the other guy's name. The guy from Mr. Mister was the guitar player from Mr. Mister was on that, and Mitchell Fromm, the keyboard player, went on to do some production stuff. So it was a good band. And Tom Dowd, working with Tom Dowd is always a pleasure, man. I miss him so much, and he became like a musical dad to me. He was his advice and his stories and his legacy is just unmatched.
You had a really, really cool career. Ray Goodman was the guy, because I talk to Ray on a regular basis. He lives down by you now somewhere in Nashville.
He does. How is he doing? I haven't heard from him in a while.
He's doing okay. He was going to come up here. We were going to do myself and Donnie Brown from the Verve Pipe and a couple of other guys here. Jim Alfredson, do you know him? He's a kind of well-known keyboard player. We were going to do a little Beatles cover live stream. And ended up the Donnie Brown from Verve Pipe, the guy I interviewed, ended up with COVID. So we ended up canceling it. But Ray was going to come up and play on that. And,
are you in Michigan now?
Huh?
Are you in Michigan?
I'm in Michigan now. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay.
I moved from New York way back when. I mean, I moved, my family reasons. My daughter got married here, and my grandkids are here, and all that. I'm old too, you know. I'm old. And
what do you call old?
Huh?
What do you call old?
Well, I don't know. And you know, some days I look in the mirror and I feel like I'm 30, and some days I look in the mirror and I feel like I'm 130. And today I'm in the middle. I'm 58 right now. So, you know.
Well, I got 11 years on you, Glenn.
Well, you look great and you sound great. And I know that I did the first Dick Wagner tribute. And that's to know you from Ray. I did the first one, and that was I did like 30 tunes. I played with everybody that day, you know, and then really there was only Danny Seraphine played a few tunes, and Johnny Badanchek played a few, and they just kind of flew in and did a few. And then the following year I had gone to New York my dad has Alzheimer's, and I went home to deal with some of those issues, and I didn't do that, and that's the one that you did. And I heard.
Did you do the one with? Did you do the one before the one that I did? Had the guy from Aerosmith and Derek.
Yes, Derek St. Holmes.
Is that the one you did?
I did that one.
Okay, with Brad Whitford.
With Brad Whitford, yes.
Okay, and then I did the next one.
You did the next one, right? Marshall Crenshaw was in that one. I didn't play with Derek St. Holmes. He had his own guy play with him. But I played with Mark Farner, Marshall Crenshaw, Scotty Morgan, somebody else too. I can't remember. Oh, and a lot of Dick Wagner's son, and he did the bulk of the Dick Wagner material.
Right.
Wagner's son might have played
Robert Wagner.
Robert Wagner, right. Still friends with him.
Yeah.
And then talking to Ray, he was the one that said, "Well, you should call Sandy because he'll do your name, because this is a brand new thing for me, new channel. You know, I'm trying to dig my way out of a pandemic here, so and find a way, and I also talk to guys who have had the experience of what on my channel I call digging the trenches. We're the unsung heroes, and I hate to put it that way, but guys like you who played behind Cyndi, who played behind Joan Jett, the Monkees, and the list goes on. Drummers, folks, we know who you are, but a lot of times we're playing for people and they don't know who we are. The audience doesn't care. They're there to see Cyndi, they're there to see Joan Jett, and your job is to make them look good. And your satisfaction comes from knowing you did that they were happy with your performance and you made them look good. And that's doing a good job for you, which really is, people don't realize it, it's a very selfless thing. You got to pull your ego out of it. If they want you to play electric drums, yes, sir, fine. They want you to do an Archie Bunker impersonation. Sure, let's have fun with that. You know what I mean? You're the jack of all trades. And that's these are the drummers I'm talking to on my channel. Dig in the trenches. Dig in the trenches. These guys. There's a few who get known, but mainly our job, we get the calls because we're supposed to. Guys like you get a call from Cyndi. She knows you're going to make her look good. And she knows she can trust the guy behind her is not going to start playing double bass drum fills during time after time.
Right. And that's the one thing that Cyndi told me on many occasions, and so did Joan mention this in different words, but they both said, you know, when I'm singing, I never have to think about you. I never have to worry about the drums. I know when I'm singing in a certain kind of cadence or in a certain kind of rhythmic and tapping my foot, you're always right there, you know. Right. And that's the advice that I give to any drummer playing behind a solo artist is to keep your eye on that artist, because
Right.
her or his body language would tell you a lot about where the tempo is, and that's the number one thing for drummers to remember is to play the song, and to play the song consistently. You know, you're the clock, you're the backbone of the band, you are the heartbeat of the band, and yes, you're the unsung hero. But when you have 10,000 people clapping along to the song, well, that is you that's making them clap.
Amen. Preach it, bro.
That's it, baby. The most important guy in that band, or the most important person in that band, is the drummer.
Oh, and this is the truth. I feel this. A really great band with a drummer who doesn't know his job and not a good timekeeper is going to sound bad, mediocre. But a okay band with a really solid drummer is going to sound fantastic.
It's right. Exactly.
I tell that to everybody. You know, if you can lay into boom, 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 ba, and keep it right there, you're going to work, and the band's going to sound good. You know? Right.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you doing this for me. I'm going to cut it down probably to like 40 minutes. I may throw a little bit of that Pat Travers groove in there because I bet you did. It was really cool. And I'll send you a link to it. I'll link to Rob, and it'll be up on the channel. And if you haven't, go to the channel, like and subscribe.
Awesome. Okay.
It's known.
Awesome.
I hope I get to see you in person one day once this crazy time is all over.
That'll be great. And be sure to say hi to Ray, and of course to Rob too.
I will. I'll probably, now that this is done, I'll probably call Rob tonight and let him know.
Awesome.
He was expecting me to do this. All right.
Awesome.
Nice seeing you, Sandy.
Fantastic.
I appreciate it, Clint.
Anyway,
Thank you
let
so
me
much.
quickly show you that Heat in the Street groove. Just so you can count it. This is a good way to get to know odd meter grooves. It's better always to count them in subdivisions. So that first subdivision is 13/8, but the first subdivision of the 13/8 is 6 and 7. Let's go nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now let's take it up to tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then they break that 13 up into 8 and 5. Okay? And you could count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's cumbersome. The way that I count it, the way that probably most people would count it, would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go slow. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's take that up to tempo. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, they do a cool variation on that, or at least Sandy did, and I don't know if the original drummer did it on the track, but Sandy did this, and he got cymbal crashes instead of those accents on 2 and 5, now 2, 4, and 1, right? And so it's kind of cool, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So let me show you that slow. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 4, 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Let's take that up the tempo. So, there you have it. 6 and 7, 4, 4, and 5, 8. With the cymbal crashes.
One more spin. I'm telling you, I'm digging the spin. I'm going to make this like a thing. You know, I'm kind of trying to become the Joe Rogan of drumming interviews, I guess. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of it. Sandy, it's a pleasure to talk to. He's not only a great drummer and has had a great, illustrious career playing with great people, doing a great job. But he's just a great guy. You know, to give this little starting channel the opportunity to interview a man of his caliber, a drummer of his caliber. Anyway, if you haven't, get a chance, go back and listen to some of those great tunes, watch on YouTube. Some of the Cyndi Lauper videos of the 80s, you can find them where Sandy's playing on them. I've seen a few. And of course, you can find some of those Monkees videos from 2002, 2003 that he was playing on. Really, really fun to watch. Watch them. Watch how he performs his job. Man, oh man, oh man. Anyway, stay tuned. We got more interviews coming up throughout the course of the year. I'm going to try to give you once a month, bring you somebody. Anyway, live well and be well during this crazy time. See you soon.